So I am Baroness Camilla de la Reynarde, and I have been teaching this class for a very long time. Back to when the day people would tell me, oh, knitting is a period, but they were wrong. And knitting exists throughout the majority of the medieval time period. And we have a lot of artifacts to show us what they are. But before we really get started on that, let's talk about wool. What am I going to knit? You're going to be knitting wool. The majority of artifacts that have been found were in wool. There is also silk, but silk was generally for the upper middle class and on up. So you're not going to be knitting in silk a lot. You're going to have to save it for special occasions. There is no evidence that I know of yet, because anything I tell you today could be contradicted by a grapevine tomorrow. But there's no evidence yet for new world fibers like alpaca and vicuna, and there's not much evidence for cashmere and mohair. Mohair may have been used a bit, but not very much. There's nothing about knitting with linen so far, or hemp so far. So what tools am I going to be using? I'm going to be using double-pointed knitting needles. Knitting flat is a later invention when people started turning the heels on stockings. And you can tell who knew how to purl when they're knitting flat on the heel flap and who didn't. Who winds up with garter stitch heel flap. So you're going to be using double pointed needles, lots of needles, and lots of sizes. The smallest needle I use is 0.75 millimeters that I use for knitting silk, which we'll get to in a bit. And if you're worried about the price on needles that small, because inox sets are kind of pricey, they're like $15. And you get 4 stubby little needles that aren't long enough. And they're very pointy. I stabbed myself and bruised all my fingerprints with those. So what you do is, to get over the fear of losing one of these expensive needles, especially since they're generally 4 needle sets, fine, go to some place that sells model airplanes and railroads, toy trains, stuff like that, and they will have the modeling version of dowel rods. They have metal rods, various sizes, yard-long pieces, for about $5 a pop. They are sold in millimeters, so you would have to know what size needle you need in millimeters. Now, when you think of the modern American needle numbering system, when you get into the smaller numbers that goes from 0 to quintuple 0, that's not standardized to the millimeters, because I compared and contrasted several sets of small needles that I had, and a 000 in one brand was one size, and a 000 in another brand was another size. So it comes down to what gauge you can get with the materials that you are using. So how do you increase and decrease? There's evidence for a lifted bar increase, which can be made to slant left or right, but they don't get granular enough to say, okay, this time and place in this artifact they use lifted bar increase slanting left. They haven't gotten that granular. Same for decreases. There's evidence dating back to the 14th century of knitting 2 together as a decrease. But there again, they don't, you can tell in the artifact whether it slants left or right, but they don't get into the nitty gritty of, okay, this artifact as decreases the slant left. Yarn over as an increase seems to be used as a decorative item in stuff dating from about the 1550s on to the end of the century that we will see when we get into the artifacts. And of course, when you create a yarn over, you immediately have to do a decrease to compensate, otherwise your stuff's going to grow. Now, cast on methods unknown at this time. Bind off methods. When you can see a bound off edge, it looks like a modern bound off edge, so that doesn't seem to have changed. All right, on with the show. Now, this is in Henry VII's Lady Chapel. So this is listed on the timeline. This dates from, where is it? 1503 to 1509. It's a little difficult to see, but we have a scene where the lady of the house has her husband's church hike up, and she's beating his bare butt with some rods. And he's holding a knitting knife, which is a yarn winding tool that is still available today. It's like two T's perpendicular to each other, and one little divot on it has a notch. So if you know how many yards around before you get back to that notch, it's a way to measure how much yarn you have on that knitting knife before you take it off, turn it into a skein. And there's a close-up of the knitting knot. And of course, this would have been considered women's work, so it's really showing that he's henpacked. This is Spain. This is 1465. This is the picture that they used on the teaching blurb for this event. This is Spain, 1465. This is by Nicholas Zaratiga, scenes from the life of Our Lady. The ladies in front, these are all probably saints. Their finger loop braided because she's beating it down as she weaves it to tighten it up and winding it on the bobbin. And they're doing it in front of the knitter. She is knitting a sock from the toe up. So we have pictorial evidence of someone knitting a sock in Spain, 1465. She's using 4, if not 5 needles. And from the way she's holding her hand, it looks like she might be throwing yarn right-handed. There's these whole big discussions about right-handed versus left-handed, American versus continental. Did you have the yarn around your neck? Just on and on. And the evidence isn't firm anywhere. But it looks like she's doing it right-handed. There's a bunch of knitting Madonnas from the 14th century, and they look like they're all knitting right-handed too. Now, this is just post-period. This is 1619-ish. This is some of the latest info from the Tudor tailor that knitting yarns weren't necessarily spun like modern yarns, because she's knitting a long tube that could be a sock. There again, you see double pointed needles, 4 or 5 of them, 2 balls of yarn. So she's either doing color work or the yarn is flying as she knits. It can go either way. Hats. Let's get into hats. If you are a male over the age of 12 in England, you're supposed to be wearing a hat, pulled and dressed in England. So say for the law. And the Museum of London has a lot of different hat bits and pieces. This is kind of an archaeological brown version. Of this hat. This is a recreation from a pattern in the Tudor Child. And to look at it, you would think, oh, the background extras wore that at a Christmas story. No, It's older than that. It's knit differently than you would think. But that we have artifact evidence, we have pictorial evidence. Let's see if I've got it with this. This is just one of the styles. And of course, all of these are cool. If you stick to darker jewel tones, I mean, avoid pink or lime green, stuff like that. And here's one that may be more or less the style cap, but doesn't have, no longer has the ear flaps. And there's the pattern, the Tudor child. And there's the 1590 charter for Queen Elizabeth's Hospital in Bristol. What are the boys all wearing? This. So that's one style. Now this was knit to be felted because I can wear it. I'm not going to mess up my hair. I can wear it, but this is made out of acrylic, and it's not going to shrink down. Now, Tudor flat caps. There's a lot of Tudor flat cap bits and pieces in the Museum of London, and there's no one definitive Tudor flat cap. Because everyone thinks it looks like this, and a lot of them do, but a lot of them have different features. For instance, instead of turning the brim up on this one, they've slashed it and it's hanging down. And this has been so heavily felted, it won't ravel. Here again, it is now archaeological brown. The cappers were a guild dating back to the 14th century. So we know what regulations they had about capping. And now in the 16th century, if you're over the age of 12, you're supposed to wear something on your head, preferably made in England. Now the construction on these is pretty basic. You cast on here, believe it or not, increase out to however wide you want your brim, decrease back in, then you fold the cast on roll up to meet your working edge and you knit it together. I'll demo that here in a minute. And then you increase back out to match or not the width of your brim and then decrease. If you find a modern tam pattern, it will work. And then if you want to be more authentic, you make it too big and you felt it and brush it and shave it and do it again. Because the goal was to make it really, really tough.
So is this almost like if you were going to do a tubular cast on for, because it's double.
I just use a very loose knit cast on. So I've got that gap between the cast on stitches to reach through when I'm folding it up to meet the working edge.
Yeah, that's cool. I would never think that that's how that's constructed.
Oh yeah, several different hats are like that. And think about it. You are in a country that's undergoing a small ice age. If this were a medieval setting or Tudor setting, this room wouldn't be this warm at all. And there, like I said, there's 100 variations on this. Some of the ones from the Mary Rose, which was Henry VIII's flagship that sank in 1545, have a bit of silk fabric tacked into it. Because I can tell you from personal experience, wool over silk is the warmest combo in the world. So this is kind of the stereotypical version. This one's slightly atypical because instead of having folded brim on one piece, not only is it split, it's knit flat. So you see the garter stitch edge on that. Yeah, it's a little hard to see, but that's what they did. So they just made it as a tam, I suppose, then went back and picked up the stitches, just knit it flat. And that's why it has that ripple effect. Now, some of them have been found that have had coins or metals knit into the brim, and no one knows why. Don't know, lucky beer money or gambling or whatever. This shows up frequently when some coffee table book discusses Tudor caps. And apparently, I've never found a better picture than this, but it may be two caps grafted together. So this one's an anomaly. It exists, but we're not sure how widespread it was.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So you had said archaeological brown.
That's a term people are using now because it didn't start out that color. It's really hard to tell what color it was supposed to be, but now it's mud brown. So people are calling it archaeological brown when all else fails. Now, some of them may have started out red. The Elizabethans wore a lot of what we would call pumpkin spice range colors. So that was popular. And that shows a bit more of how they folded the brim up. And there's another cap bed. Yeah, the Museum of London, if you know, once you get the hang of searching their database, they have a lot of cap fragments. Here's one where the color survived a little better. And there's one with an ear flap, like that first one we saw. There's an ear flap. And some of them would have had ties. Now, here again, you could probably pick those stitches up on the edge here and then knit that. Can't quite tell which direction it's knit from. Or you can start here and cast on like 2 stitches per needle and then geometric progression, do it back down, graft it onto here. There's a bigger ear flap. And that's the finished product. And people think, oh no, that's not right. That can't be right, but it is.
It's funny it would be oriented that way because you would kind of intuitively think that it would be the other way.
And here you can see where they grafted the ear flap on.
When they were grafting things, did they just pick up stitches and continue knitting, or
sometimes I can't find enough good pictures to tell. So I don't know for sure. Now this one gives an indication of how heavily felted they could be with all that slashing. Now, more hats. This is the inspiration for this hat. I wanted a baronial coronet. This is called a barrette. These were very popular in the 1550s onward, and they were made and exported all around Western Europe, all over the place. And some were sewn, some were velvet, some were knitted and may have had mohair in it. So that's why I did this one. So I started out, I did a couple of inches, just plain black. And then I did the design. So this is a baronial coronet. Now all of these charts, all of these motifs are from various period pieces, like the Sion pouches, stuff like that, or the Las Huelgas burial pillows. So I had to squish them around a little bit to make it fit, but I did. And then I closed it up. I thought I might have to put horsehair in here to make it stand up. No, it stands up enough. And then from there on, you just put it in, divide it up. Let's see, 3. Anyway, you want to do it so it's not a square. So you have to do decreases every now and then in the center of the needle too, to keep it looking right. So I don't get brass hat headache from this one. Because that's the one that inspired me. And of course it's a miniature. But I can see that she's got little light colored dots. So that's why I had to make this one. Now, this one kind of straddles the line in terms of gauge, because I haven't discussed gauge yet. When you're talking about bigger than 8 stitches to the inch, you're talking about the average knitter making stuff possibly for commercial production, possibly for home consumption. It could go either way. I think this is like 9-10 stitches to the inch. This is a monstrosity from the Museum of Copenhagen. Now, when this leads us to mama caps. Now, when people put stuff on Pinterest, please God, give the collection number and the correct name of the museum. It's the Museum of Copenhagen, not a thing. And here's one from the Museum of Ireland that people are claiming is a thrum cap. We're discussing drum caps and mama caps now. And here again, they just gave the name of the museum, did not include the collection number of the artifact, and the museum does not have a searchable database. Now, thrum caps. Are they fur? Are they thrum? Then there's a million different ways that people want to thrum them. Because they're supposed to look kind of like this. They're supposed to look furry, shaggy. There's a lot of cliches and possible just flat out myths about thrum caps. The most common thing you will find is that thrum caps were worn by males, especially ship's carpenters, in red so they could be identified easier. This is all contradicted by the evidence, which should be in the handout. I don't know if it all is. Okay. Thrum caps were not found on the Mary Rose. There's no thrum caps in the Museum of London database, but that's not conclusive. That's not the end all and be all. The fact that they were only worn by sailors, there's a woodcut showing a workshop making straight pins. All the men in there are wearing thrum caps. So are these furred or thrummed? And if they were thrummed, and I forget what the word means, if they were thrummed, how were they thrummed? Some people think, okay, you make the cap, then you get all these scrap wool and weave it through there and shear it, and then you felt it. That is incredibly inefficient because you have to be able to make this fast enough that you're going to make enough to eat. So there was a craft show on one of the local educational channels that I caught, and she was talking about something she called a loop stitch, like she had invented the wheel. And between watching that a few times and searching Barbara Walker, who did 3 volumes of knitting stitches, I figured out how to do it. And it makes a lot more sense and it goes a lot faster.
Have you seen modern thrummed mittens? Modern thrummed mittens where they're using unplied like what do you call that? The little chunks of wool.
Roving.
Yeah, roving. It's almost like roving, and as you're knitting it, you put in this material, but it's the loops or the tufts are facing inward toward your hand.
I've seen that here and there. That seems to be popular in modern Scandinavia. Now, I don't know how well this is going to show up on the Zoom. And if you want to come stand right here and look over my shoulder while I do this, it'll make a lot more sense. Okay. So I knit the stitch. The new stitch is on the right needle. The old stitch is on the left needle. I come between the 2 needles, catch the yarn around my thumb, bring it back between the two needles, knit the old stitch again, and immediately bind off new stitch 1, because if I don't, the drum will just pop through. And there, I've thrummed it. And it barely slowed me down. So let's do it again. Knit the stitch. Do not take it off the old second needle. New stitch, old stitch. Come between the two needles, catch it. Bring it back between the two needles. Knit the old stitch. Now I have the two new stitches, cast off the first new stitch. Now I have it, it's thrummed and it's locked in place. I can't pull it back.
Do you do that every row or do you alternate?
Now, what I did on this cap, I did it every other stitch, every other row. So you kind of alternate. It depends on how shaggy you want.
Yeah. Can I see that the red?
Sure. And there again, I did like an 8-row brim and turned it under before I started, or as I started thrumming. Because this will also show you how you close the brims. So I'm going to be skipping a few stitches here. But here's my cast on edge. I turn it up. I go through the stitch. I go through the cast on stitch. That's why you want to use a loose cast on. I knit the cast on stitch. And then and it's showing. So let's do it again.
You ever seen Elizabeth Zetterman do something like that?
Where does surprise me a bit? Go through the cast on loop. Knit the stitch. If it's looser and floppier, you don't have to be so quite so deliberate about it, but I'm exaggerating for teaching purposes. So that's how you thrum easily. And that's how you fold up a brim and close it. So let me get this out of me. Now the problem is, since this is wool, not many people are going to wear this unless it's weather like this or colder. And this is the market scheme that inspired this particular hat, because that's my husband. So he must have had an ancestor in that part of Holland. And he said it's too warm to wear on a regular basis anywhere. If you're gonna have that. Now, these are caps that are slightly out of period. These are from an island called Svalbard, which is at the edge of the Arctic Circle. A whaling center was established there about 1605-ish. So these are out of period, but they're workman's caps. Now, what do we see and what don't we see? We see color work. We see various shapes. By this time, the Tudor flat cap is gone. We don't see any thrum caps. We don't see any Monmouth caps, which I'll talk about here in a minute. And we see variegated yarn. Deliberately variegated yarn. Because that's blue and white. And that's blue and white. And it may be kind of like those novelty sock yarns that make patterns. So this one has striping and what might be like a novelty sock yarn insert. Some of these caps are double thick, not just double brimmed, but completely double thick, which is also an Elizabeth Zimmerman. Remember, they're at a whaling station at the edge of the Arctic Circle. There you go. So now you have another blue bit here, blue and white bit. And it has a double brim. So these caps are all over that. That one's plain. That's kind of the version of this one. But it's got a bit of color work. And it's got the brim turned up. And it might be one of the double caps. So you've got 4 layers of wool at the pulse points in your head. So that's gonna keep it warm. There's another one. That one's been felted. Not all caps were.
Was there color work, stranded color work, like how we would do it, or? You know, like it wouldn't be like intarsia or something like that,
No.
right? Yeah.
No evidence of that yet. Now, this cap has an elongated crown and it's made of 2 different sizes of wool. You've got the finer outer wool, and you see you've got a real coarse inner wool. Now, the way you do these double caps is there again, you cast on them loosely. You do one cap, then you come back, pick up the stitches, and basically make another cap and shove one inside the other. This is in Elizabeth Zimmerman. Yeah, okay, let me finish talking about mammoth caps. Mammoth caps exist for a long, long time. They're mentioned in Shakespeare. They were mentioned in the packing list for Jamestown and Plymouth Plantation as late as the 1620s. And they're generally described as being round, brown, and top with a button. The most scholarly article was written by Kirsty Buckland about 40 or 50 years ago now, but no one's improved on it. So you cast on 60 stitches because this has the largest gauge of any single artifact. It's about 3/4 of 1 stitch equals 3/4 of an inch, something like that. And that may be after felting. You're shrinking it a bit. So you cast it on, you knit about 16 rows or so, 8 rows. But you do 16 rows with no decreases and then fold the brim up, knit it together. And then you just decrease. Now, the way I made the button at the top, I leave the last 5 stitches or so and knit an inch. And then drawstring it closed, put the tapestry needle down through the center, come out at the base, go around and cinch it up. And it might make a button that's a little too firm for inside a helmet, which is what these were meant for. A lot of the time, it's not a hard and fast rule. And then on the brim, they came back and did something. And there's only one definitive cap that everyone talks about. And so it's hard to say who did what. They may have just turned and knit back in the other direction, thereby creating a purl row. And maybe that's what they did. But there is a loop on it of 14 stitches. Buckland's pretty adamant about that. Now, I thought I put that in there, but I have a picture from a mannequin at the National Army Museum in London. And the way they did the loop on the cap, basically they did some yarn around something. And they came back and did like 14 buttonhole stitches. And that made their loop. But it's a hot day, you're carrying your spear or whatever, you hang your cap there. That's my theory. Now, stockings. Stockings are interesting because they start out the 16th century as being for servants and children and generally in wool. The idea of when they became silk stockings is no one's sure yet. There's no definitive answer of when the first silk stocking appeared. But this one is silk. It's from the Museum of London, and they can't date it any better than mid-16th century. So it's lost the calf, and you see one heck of a clock and heel gusset in here, and the heel's too destroyed to tell if it was purled or garter stitch or how it was done. Now, this is a Scogger from the Mary Rose. And they don't know, for a while there, they weren't sure if it was a footless stocking or some sort of sleeve, and they think they've decided on footless stocking. And you can't find any better pictures of the silly thing than this, really. So you can't tell if it was cast out the ankle. Anyway, that one's a mess.
What is a scogger? Is it,
It was the Tudor equivalent of a leg warmer.
okay,
Now, these are the Eleanora of Toledo stockings from 1562. Eleanora of Toledo had, you would think she would have a rich, privileged life, and she did to her point. But she also had like 12 to 14 live births that we know of. And later portraits included cliches like her holding a handkerchief, which might indicate she had tuberculosis. She died during a malaria epidemic in 1562, along with her son, the 16-year-old cardinal. And she was buried so hastily that one of her stockings was on inside out, and she wasn't laced properly. If you go to the Uffizi or wherever it is, it has her dress and her stockings and her accessories from the graves after they were dealt with in the century. It's somewhere between touching and gross because you look at the hem of her dress and see where her toes were.
Hmm.
Now, these were originally red and they are knee-high and they are silk. And they look a little chunky, partly because I had to squish the picture around to make it fit. And partly because silk, pure knitted silk, does not have much elasticity. So you had to make it to fit and not necessarily make it to stretch. Now, this has a plethora of knit purl patterns. This is from the wrong side of the cuff, where we have lozenges and a zigzag, and these are all formed with knit purl work and yarn over work. So the knit purl work is only on the cuff as a decoration. So we don't know if it was where and when it started being used as a deliberate hold to drawstring, for instance. So you can see the detail of the knit purl work there. There's the zigzag detail. And there's the toe decrease area.
so top down?
Yeah.
Can I see that when you're done?
Now, when I made these, this was the best I could get. It's a silk wool blend, and I was cranking it to get like 10 stitches to the inch, but it should be finer than that. Now, Eleanor was a woman after my own heart because she had wool stockings to wear to bed, so her feet wouldn't be cold. A hero.
How did they do so how did you decide on how they did the heel? Yeah.
I have an old needlework book, just post World War II, and it had instructions for several different kinds of heels, including one called a Dutch heel, and that's what I went with. So here's the knit purl row areas. So Eleanora was a bit of a fashion icon. We don't know how much of this is a Spanish influence or not. We do know the Medicis had several knitters on staff, and their names are listed in the timeline, like Balthazar and Guido. It's great. There's the seed stitch. And I've got that picture in there upside down. Now, this was a stocking during Restoration, so you can see it's reddish. And they don't look quite as red here after Restoration, so they don't look as stubby as the first picture. So I had to make the first picture fit. But they were still probably held up with garters. The Tudor tailor has directions on not only how to make garters, which are knit flat, but how to cross hatch them to wear. Because you don't just tie them there, you have to go back around and come up here and then tie them again over your knee. Now, this is Maria of Aragon. Everyone and their cousin knows all the Eleanora portraits, but no one knows about Maria of Aragon, which is a surprise because Maria and Eleanora both lived in the Italian peninsula at the same time. Don't want to give this information. They were similar socioeconomic class, and they both had medical problems. And Maria died in 1568. So they lived more or less in the same place. They were both wealthy women. They had the best that they had their best lives, but they both had health problems. She's listed in Mummy Wiki if you want to read the gory details, because they are gory. So she was interred wearing silk stockings too, but these are hers. Look how plain they are. What do we see and what don't we see? We see a cast on area. We see creases that, might indicate gartering. We see the heel formation area and instep formation area, outlined with the use of pearl stitches. And there is a false seam knitted in the back, knit pearls to make a false seam. Hers are yellow, and the only pearls on hers are the decorative area there and the false seam. That's it. So this is from Naples, the Church of San Domenico Maggiore. I tried to contact them during the pandemic and didn't hear back, so I can't get any more information in. There's a show, close up of the ankle showing the clock detail.
How did it get the name clock? It was like a grandfather's clock in Lynn or something like that. I've been looking at that recently.
Is it the big long gusset? Is it what they're talking about?
That's what they're calling.
On the outside,
Yeah.
So it's not,
to be seen.
Yeah, it was generally at the ankle, and then post-period, there's the burials of some royal children that had like metallic embroidered peacocks at the clocks on their stockings. I think it really got them.
And when after World War II, they stopped doing it roughly.
Clocks,
Unless you,
decorative clocks.
unless you make your own songs.
Yeah. If you look around, there's still decorative clocks on the socks, but you still really have to look. But these are the linen understockings that Maria was wearing, because you don't necessarily want your bare skin next to your very best item, or it's for warmth. And it's not uncommon to see this. You see linen understockings and then woolen hosen. You see linen understockings and silk stockings. So this is not uncommon, and it transcends class lines. There was something bopping around Facebook the other day where they were studying the body of Gustavus Adolphus, who died in 1540 something. And he was wearing 3 linen shirts under, I don't know what. But, if we were doing this out in the parking lot, we'd all be a little more bundled up, and that would be mild weather. And remember, we're talking about a small ice age. So she's buried with her linen understockings. Eleanora wasn't. And, maybe she just wasn't buried with them. Maybe they didn't survive all the various renovations of the tombs. I don't know. I'm not sure they know. Sometimes they don't. But you can see the range of style you can use on stockings. And these are other stockings from same church from some of her family members. I think those are toddler, that's why they look so short and chubby. And these are from a male adult.
Is there
And-
calf shaping in the?
So there is some calf shaping and decreases for the knee because men are gonna be wearing more over the knee stockings to meet their hosen, their various types of hose. These are way out of period. These are 1640, but it's the first time you see knit purl ribbing used as a shaping element. It's at the knee. That's a close-up of the lozenge on the cuff, showing knit purl work. If you want to go to England, I don't know when they're gonna start doing it again, but the Victoria and Albert and or the Museum of London, if you make the reservation months ahead of time, like 3 months, you can go to the Victoria and Albert and tell them, I want to have a close-up look at artifact X, Y, Z. And you can do it for free. They tag you like a deer and escort you to the textile room in the back, but you can do it, and it is.
Oh, man.
The items are laying under acetate to protect them, but you can get your camera down this close if you want to. Back to the stockings. Okay, so we have knit for purl for ribbing at the knee as a structural shaping element. And this is 1640. So far, we don't see that before this time. And that's an embroidered faux seam on those stockings.
Like a, what's that called? This,
Yeah, you just drove it out.
sorry.
It'll come to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we all know what we're talking
yeah.
about. And that shows the clock and the turned heel, which is similar to the heel that I used on Eleanor. And that's the toe decrease area, showing sort of mitten style shaping. Now, this is one of my favorite pictures that I've ever found. This shows what can only be described as mantyhose, because they have sewn the black stockings, probably silk, to the poofy pants. So we have mantyhose. Now, people don't realize, a real surprise is that you have this geometric increase in the production of knitted stockings in the 16th century. Joan Thirst estimated that the English population of 5 million at that time needed at least 2 pairs of stockings a year. By the end of the century, that would mean 10 to 15 million pairs. People prefer to buy rather than make them, and an estimated 22,000 knitters, or 220,000 knitters, 13% of the pauper class were needed just for stockings in England and for export. So that's why you have these work fair programs where a professional knitter or someone who knew how to make stockings gather the widows and orphans or whoever they deemed you're going to work for your bowl of gruel to teach them how to make stockings. And the use of knitted stockings and sewn stockings were side by side through the majority of the century. There again, you see it as late as Jamestown in 1605 and some of the later Virginia colonies. They talk about some of the older men wearing sewn hosen. So it's slowly starting to go out of fashion as knitting became more economic. But you just have thousands and thousands of people doing nothing but knitting stockings for their daily bowl of gruel, basically. Now, sleeves. For years and years and years, there were knitting history books that said, oh yeah, they had knitted sleeves next topic. They were mentioned in wills, but you never saw them. So February 28th, 2020, I was at Norwich Castle with a study group and they brought out the sleeve. This was going to be published in the Everyday Tutor book, which was going to be a book release party about a week and a half after this. And I thought, should I stay for that book release party in mid-March 2020? Or should I just go on home? Well, I don't want to stay in England quite that long. I'll go on home. I got home Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. By the end of the week, the world was closed. And that particular Tudor Taylor book didn't come out for another year and a half, 2 years.
Good decision.
Yeah, well, you know, it was one of those decisions you have to make way in advance. But no, I don't quite want to stay that long, as much fun as it would be. It was getting sketchy in England by that time.
Mhm.
I can tell.
You probably wouldn't have been able to travel.
Probably not.
Too, yeah.
I'll tell you the drugstore story later about that. But this shows the details of these cuffs. So
Oh,
they can't date these firmly. But we have knit two, purl two ribbing strictly as a decorative element. These perform no function at all. But we have knit purl stitches. And we have a welt edge, basically. Where you knit a couple rows and then you purl a couple of rows and then it allegedly keeps it from curly. And we all know different. And you have some diagonal knit purl work. Here is a bit of ornamentation. Yeah, I put the false seam in here. I don't know if this one has it or not. And then a sleeve tab to pin to your garment.
can I see that too? When you're
There's the exterior of the sleeve. And I think that they had these items laid out on tables and you couldn't touch them. Lean over and take all the pictures you wanted. I didn't have enough sense to lay a ruler by them to get an idea of the gauge. But I think the one in the Tudor Taylor book's like 8 to 10 stitches to the inch. So there's a better picture of the cuff. And in this shot, you can see the exterior and the interior of the cuff.
Is this typically how they would do like a false seam with a slip stitch?
Well, it's a purl stitch, but
Oh.
yeah. I don't know, but that would make the most sense to me. And there's the detail on the sleeve tab. Now, the real kicker on that is there's 2 or 3 sets of sleeves in the Museum of London. And they were mentioned in an article by Leslie O'Connell Edwards. If you have an opportunity to search out her stuff and read it, I think she's getting like a doctorate in rural studies from Oxford after getting 2 masters or something like that. So she wrote it, it is worth reading. And she mentioned these sleeves in an article. And I went to the Museum of London database, plugged in the collection number to the search bar, and nothing happened. I thought, oh, I gotta call, try it again. Nothing happened. I emailed the Museum of London and said, I'm searching this item mentioned by. Here's the number. Did she get it right? They said, oh yeah, that's really not a session. It's not in our database. It hasn't been officially uploaded to our visual database. And they've sent me a picture. It's like this big. There's no way to expand it. But if you read the Everyday Tutor, they'll show some of the other styles of sleeves, which are basically just like this. There's no decorative cut to them. You have a few rows of alternating purl and knit rows to make the welt. And then it's pretty much just like this. And the increases and decreases on these are just all over the map. Everyone nowadays, modern knitters thinks, oh, I must measure and only increase or decrease every 5 inches symmetrically. No. They say, oh, it's starting to look a little, doesn't look big enough. I'll put 5 increases in this row. wherever I want to. So they were a little slovenly about that. Now, what we would call sweaters and they would call vests or waistcoats. This may be a child's vest. This is, I believe the chest is 32. The sleeves are now short. And it's more than likely wool. This, on the other hand, is the upper end of the scale. This is from what we would call a sweater that was tucked around a small child, not an infant, in 1627 in Copenhagen. This is wool and a metallic yarn, and they showed absolute disregard for the gauge when it came to mixing the metallic, the size of the metallic with the wool. This was pinned out. There's no decreases or increases or anything like that to shape it. They just pinned it and blocked the crap out of it. And there's a detail of the selvage and color work.
It's crazy.
This is a construction diagram, gives you an idea of how these things were shaped. Some of them will pull over, some of them are open. This is one that's out of period from the Victorian Albert. You see the color work.
Sorry, really quick question. For the sweaters that were open, would they steek them or would they knit them as separate?
I can't get a good enough picture to tell, so I don't know. I think the Danish ones were knitted, but don't quote me. This one shows knit pearl blocks.
Cool.
And I don't know if there's a date on this one. I've got it listed as out of period. That shows you some hypothetical construction since it found the pieces. And that's another piece and another jacket piece. And another jacket piece.
Are they using knitting pins like these? Really fine wool, or not yet?
It can be, but it's generally more in silk that it's super fun work.
Okay.
Oh my
So
goodness.
see, here's one that opens, then it's sleeveless. Now, be careful when you wear these out and about because according to the Moda a Firenze books for Cosimo and Eleanora, best evidence suggests so far that these may have been worn in your private apartments, think bed jacket or incipient bathrobe or dressing gown. So far, there's not much evidence to suggest that these were outerwear. So if you want to think otherwise and find a theory or evidence that backs you up, happy hunting. Just remember, I'm not, anything I tell you today could be contradicted by a grapevine tomorrow. Gloves. This shows you how elaborate sewn glove mittens could be. And if you flip these over, they have a slit to get your fingers out. But now we're talking about knitting. This is from Norwich Castle, and it's 16th century. This is a child's mitten, and it has all the shaping of an oven mitt. However, it appears to have been knit from the fingertip up. Weird. Like another one I'm going to show you, because you'll see that this is nailed off edge. Because there's the fingertip.
How would you do the thumb? Is it like an afterthought?
Yeah, think Elizabeth Zimmerman. She's got one of those Fair Isle yoke sweaters.
Yeah.
Where you knit the torso and then you knit the sleeve and then you wrapped it together at the armpit to start doing the Fair Isle yoke.
Oh.
So trust in Elizabeth Zimmerman. to tell you.
I love her.
Yeah, don't we all? So they knit from the fingertip up, they knit the thumb up, and then they wrapped it together, and you can almost see how they did it there. There's the cup, and you see what's clearly a bind off edge.
Yes.
So it doesn't look any different than a modern bind off edge. This is the Museum of London mitten. This gauge is 8 stitches to the inch. They sent me a photo with a measuring tape in the background, so I was able to finagle around and see that it was 8 stitches to the inch. So what do we see and what don't we see? Don't see any ribbing. We do see some color work, and we see a bit more shaping and finesse than we saw in that other mitten. Again, it's knit from the fingertip up. Knit from the fingertip, grafted, joined together. It's got a bit of color work and a bound off edge. Now, let's see. No, anyway. This is what it looks like when you make it for an adult. Now, when I saw that mitten, I thought, why did they put a mitten on a mitten with a thumb on a child's mitten? Because that mitten is this long. I've had my hand next to it. Mine, and then in the case. Why did they do that? And then I figured it out. Because once you do some decreases here, because I don't know how many of us started out knitting the little pouch mittens for children, because it won't keep their thumb in the thumb. So you knit it like this and you decrease it here. My thumb's not coming out. And I had to increase the pattern a bit instead of, like 1 row and 1 stitch. I had to do 2 rows and 2 stitches to make the pattern more visible.
When you scale a pattern from a child size up to an adult size, are you maintaining the same gauge?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Basically, with this, what you can do is you can find a mitten pattern in the size you want to make it and just read it backwards. I mean, if it says gather the last 5 stitches or something and
Cast on.
just cast on 5 stitches and then read the pattern backwards. Really can.
It's true, yeah.
I look at that too. Sorry.
No, that's why they're here.
Did they ever find, I was born in 46, so I remember the mittens were
With the
had
string.
a knitted chain.
Oh, yeah.
Through the
Yes.
sleeves of my coat, so if I dropped it off, I didn't lose it, it was hanging.
Not, yeah, not that I know of.
Funny things that come back.
Yeah. Now, here again, someone posted something on Pinterest with the not entirely correct museum name and no accession numbers, the collection numbers. These are liturgical gloves from the Victorian Albert. They date them as 16th century. And yes, they are that gaudy. This is the top end of the scale. This is why you need 0.75 millimeter needles and 2 strands of size 60 silk.
Have you ever tried to knit with metallic threads?
No, I can't find a good metallic thread that I like. And the metallic threads in these gloves were a vegetable fiber core, like maybe silk. And then they actually had super fine metal wrapped around them, I think. That was according to Dr. Susan North. So we can't see how they were cast on was done because there's lace on it, which is also done in metallic.
Was that knit lace?
No, this is bottom lace.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So it's sewn on after the fact. There's the thumb area, so we can, and there's all kinds of braiding on that, so we can't see the gusset. Plus that glove is not, I don't know who they made that. As you will see here in a minute. See, we got bottom lace, we got cording. That's so couched on it. Yeah, couched on there. Got it. So we've got some pearl rows that are framing this motif. which is this motif.
Oh, you show, yeah. That is so fine. That gauge is insane.
Depending on who measures it, because I've had two people with doctorates measure. And they come up with a gauge between 16.5 stitches to the inch to 20 stitches to the inch. Depending on who measures it. It's wild.
That a fine wool?
No, this is silk. This
It
is
is silk, yeah.
two strands of size 60.
Okay.
So there's my hand, there's
Oh my
that glove.
gosh, and
So you can see, I don't know what the hell they were thinking with it on.
He didn't either.
Yeah,
Was it for show, you think?
it's obviously for some special liturgical occasion. I am not familiar with the Catholic calendar, but I know that red was used for like bishop or for certain occasions. So I don't know all the sumptuary laws and liturgical calendar for that, but that's why they're red and gold, and they have different levels of bling. So you can see some of the strand work across the back there. And that's Dr. Susan North holding the glove open, so I could try and get a shot in there. And this is a pair that is not quite as blingy. So we have the IHS motif on both gloves, and we have rosette with some beads, something, and tassels. So we have top of the social scale, not quite as blingy. This is me with Dr. Susan North at the Clockworker Center of Victorian Albert with 3 pairs of liturgical gloves. Laying under acetate, he gave me a little lit magnifier that's ready to square inch and straight. You get an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that.
I'm so jealous.
It's that shows the thumb join on one of them. Basically, they just left a slit and picked the stitches up.
Almost like Norwegian mittens, like the where you knit, it's shaped like this, but then there's a slit, like an afterthought thumb. Kind of.
I'm not familiar with that particular method, but if it sounds familiar to you, but you can see it's not. The grafting isn't invisible, which is a bit of a surprise. There's some of these things are surprising.
I wonder if it's as comfortable than the other one.
Yeah.
No, it isn't, because I tried to I made a stir glove one time out of pearl cotton, and when you just have a slit for a thumb like that, it's not as flexible, especially in something that doesn't stretch like a cotton at that gauge. So this one was intriguing because this is all couched metallic. And then you've got the thumb gusset area hidden, so you can't tell how they did it. But it has these little blingy areas on the cup, and I can't tell how they did that either.
Almost looks like a picot edge or something.
Doesn't it, Doc? That one I could get the gauge off of. But I haven't. And they did some faux seaming on fingers. And do not worry about making them look mitten, because we've got an index finger that's decreased this way, and that one that's decreased this way. So they are super artistic up to a point, and then they weren't.
That is so cool.
So you can see this is obviously couched thread added after the fact, but we've got it kind of mimicking the zigzags here. There's the edge. It looks like they kind of went back, picked it up, and did a little rounded tab. And then came back and put more bling on it. So they were real dark.
Oh, man.
And there's the thumb on that one. These I have not found information on. These are silk, and they are in the Musée de Tissu in Lyon, which is closed for the next year. They're renovating. They are gaudy. read a book about the history of silk that says that this is some sort of Chinese cloud motif. And then the fingertips are weird. I
Mhm.
can't tell if they're just, they didn't bother to decrease, they just grafted them shut.
Hmm.
Or if they bound it off and left the fingertips open. I don't know.
Oh.
There's no collection number given on it really, so.
Are they open or closed, the fingertip?
Don't know. I've contacted the museum once, and I'm waiting till my French is better to do it again. But this is what it looks like when you try and make the gloves.
Wow.
This is 2 strands of size 60 silk on 0.75 millimeter needles. The gauge is about 16 and a half inches, stitches to the inch. So, this is from the liturgical glove. This is from an Egyptian cotton fragment.
Oh, yeah.
This is my first version of this pattern. So I was working with photos I had downloaded from the Victorian Albert. Then I went to the Victorian Albert, realized I had grafted that all wrong. So I just, what the hell?
I haven't thought on that was Chinese gloves.
The motif was. The motif on the back of the hand was.
All right,
Now,
well,
whether
whether fingertips are, if they're open, I thought it is, wasn't it a style in the Chinese court? The long fingernails?
Yes, but
The metal tipped ones, that it was beauty.
I don't know when that started.
Oh, I know, I know, it's just a thought, I know,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell
But-
you, so.
I can't get enough information on those gloves.
Yeah.
Now, this is the Stir glove. This is from 1565. So we have a young man who died heroically in a naval battle, and all of his clothing was preserved in Sweden. This is in Stockholm. So allegedly, there's a name kind of knitted into the motifs. It says Reichen Sophia, but I've never been able to see it. And here again, the gauge is about 20 stitches to the inch. We've got a slit thumb opening. No gusset. It's about this long, so it may have been knit as favor. The cuff may still be curly after all these years. Because it's just cast on and there they went.
Did they catch their floats if they were long in the back when they were doing color work?
That's tough to say.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any interior pictures. When I was doing these, I would hold the main color in the right hand, and then the accent color, so like the pattern color in the left hand. And whatever happened, happened. And you have to wonder if they were in such a production mindset,
Yeah.
that that's what they thought. I don't know. The experts don't know.
Can I look at those?
This was the first attempt that I did. Just
How do you even see what you're doing? This-
magnification.
yeah.
And do not try and do 3 colors in one row because
No.
all the tension on that is a nightmare. As you can probably tell with that one.
My God. Ugh. How do you block silk? Just like
I
wool?
don't.
You don't know.
I
This
don't.
isn't blocked.
No, it comes out like that. You see this, there's not much stretch. There's not much stretch. Now, these gloves are interesting because these were found in a ditch in Holland. Apparently there was a ditch, canal, something that people were using as a trash pit for 50 years, and then they covered it over so they know, okay, nothing in here is earlier than 1600. And it's probably no earlier than 1550. So we have 3 styles of gloves and a mitten that are knitted. And I cannot find any more real information. This is from a Dutch book about gloves. Sewn gloves, gauntlets, knall bending gloves. These are all in an archaeological warehouse in Holland. So there's no one to write to and say, can you send me a better picture? No, this is what we've got. So we have a mitten.
Hmm.
We have 3 gloves. One of them has almost fringy decorative element at the cuff, but we can't tell. We don't know who owned them. Anything, but we know that they're one gloves. Now we get to the truncos. These are Dresden 1550. The originals were worn as hunting pants, I believe the lecturer said.
Hmm.
And the lining is goat skin, if I'm remembering it correctly. And we see a ton of knit pearl work. And it's silver, silk wool blend.
Oh my God.
Now, every 5 years or so, someone in the NCA said, I'm gonna make those pants. You have to take 2 things into consideration. Will you actually go through the work of doing it? Number 1. Number 2, will the intended wearer still be that size when you're done? Number 3, these things are low. Look
Yeah.
where the top of that timepiece is.
But
They are low. And most modern guys don't wear anything that low.
Not even a bathing suit.
Yeah, really, that's a Speedo, it's like, it really is. Now,
The
there's
hair
still,
will show,
Yeah.
you know, one of an undershirt, a long undershirt,
Yeah.
they don't make them that long there.
well, you can see some evidence of the points where it was
Yeah.
tied to his doublet, but still, it's that low. So I believe these are from the website of the Board Hausfrau. And I don't know how she got them, but there they are. So you can see the deliberate use of yarn over as a decorative element.
Hmm.
You see deliberate use of knit pearl stitches in conjunction with each other as decorative elements. We don't have ribbing as a structural element.
are the slashes built almost like buttonholes and then the fabric comes through?
They are deliberate. So I don't know if you like knit this section up and then go back and pick up these other stitches and knit this section up, or how they did that.
Hmm.
Or if you could do it all at once if you do different balls of yarn for each one.
Yeah.
But they are deliberately knit slashes and deliberately knit puffs, where they've gone back or as a part of it, done all these little puffs. And that codpiece is something else. So you can see we have knit pearl rows alternating. We have diagonals with yarn overs. Oh,
Wow.
so we probably have a lighter fabric between
Mm-hmm.
the knit fabric and the goat skin lining.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So yeah, that would work if you had ball of yarn per section here that would go.
Oh, yeah.
Are those are those yarn overs, the diagonal piece?
Yeah. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. That's so you see that on shawls too.
Yeah.
That
Mhm. So there's the waistband, another view of the copies. There's the points tied to the doublet.
Hmm.
Someone was trying to tell me this could be ribbing. I'm not sure I'd want a better picture.
It's a lot of wear and tear when you pull. So it's,
well, it's so funny that they're hunting pants and they would be goat skin on the inside, but then this beautiful fabric on the outside. I don't know.
That's what I was told.
That's crazy.
Now,
Oh,
this is an
yeah.
Egyptian cotton stocking. This is Mistress Audette's area more than mine. But there are a bunch of them. Primary source on that is a book in French about excavations at a certain area. Now, there have been stuff going around about a crocheted baby sock that was found in this Egyptian area. Someone has written an article about that in some archaeological review magazine, and the provenance on that sock so far is pretty sketchy.
Hmm.
So when someone says, they found a crocheted baby socket at the period, check the sources.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say yes or no. So far, in 30 years, I haven't seen anything about period crochet. But anything I tell you today could be contradicted by Creative Find tomorrow. And the provenance on the item they're talking about is very sketchy.
Hmm.
Very
When
sketchy.
did crochet come in? That is certainly. That's a big
I always-
one,
yeah.
that change.
I always thought it was
None of the
way later.
experts, none of the experts I've ever heard of mentions it, not even in passing.
Sure.
I don't know. And this goes into more jacket construction.
Hmm.
Does anyone have any questions? Because we're about done here.
Oh, this is fantastic. Thank you.
I love it.
Michael, the baby, the little child's song.
Yeah.
Do they carbon date a thread bit to
It's
go?
not financially viable for them to do that kind of thing. Because some other classes, when they, they wonder about, say, like, cable knit sweaters or Farrell sweaters or the Charles II execution sweater. And the evidence on all of those is sketchy. The Victorian Albert discusses what we know as cable knit sweaters and what people think of as Irish fisherman
Yeah.
sweaters. And the best evidence is that white Irish cable knit sweaters may have been sort of created in the 1930s to sell to the tourist. There's photographic evidence from like 150 years ago, 1850s or so. And when you see workman's sweaters, what we would call sweater or pullover, they're generally blue.
Yeah, right.
And they have simple knit purl patterns and simple cable patterns, but none of this stuff with vines going everywhere, baubles, stuff like that.
I try to make it work.
Yeah,
I have one of my needles right now.
large grain of salt on that. Now, Farrell sweaters, people say, oh, well, the color work in the Farrell sweaters. Well, you don't have to go to the Farrells to see color work. Number one. Number two, there's a myth that, okay, when the Spanish Armada crashed in the Farrell,
Oh,
yeah, they taught them about color work and talked about the tracery of the Alhambra. No. They had no language in common. Oh, the odds are very good they didn't have language in common. Number one. Number two, there was a bounty on some of those.
They
people.
killed them.
Yeah.
They found them. Yeah.
So take that with a large grain of salt. And then the Charles execution sweater. Everyone sees that thing. I'm gonna make that for A&S. Large grain of salt, please.
Sure.
According to the Tudor Tailors as of February of 2004 with their early knitting history seminar, they're working on an article they're going to call the Gaslit Garment. And it had the Charles sweater has a continuous but very iffy provenance. Charles had knitted waistcoats, but we don't know if this is the one because the first known owner of that waistcoat, the pullover one with all the knit purl work, first known owner of that sweater was 1 year old at the time of execution. So we have sketchy provenance.
Wow.
The gauge may be about 18 stitches to the inch, I think, or she's talking about something else here. Now, in 1959, they tried to run a blood test on that execution sweater, and the blood test of 1959 came back inconclusive. In 1988, they ran what's called the Castle-Meyer test by the London Metro Police Department, and it came back negative for blood. Now, in 2010, they discussed the idea of doing gas chromatograph mass spectrography, but it wasn't tried because that kind of thing is pricey. So we don't know if it was Charles, because apparently there's some stately homes that have a sweater they claim the execution sweater, and the stain on it turns out to be rust. whatever, the
Uh-huh.
provenance is really sketchy.
So it's a myth.
It, looking that way, the Tudor tailors are on the job.
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful one.
So that's what we have. Any questions?
This was great. Thank you so much.
What a wonderful study.
Like I can't even imagine trying to knit at that gauge. I don't think I would lose my
It's a
mind.
bit of an adjustment.
Well, even just how do your hands feel when you're knitting that fine? I mean, if I'm doing lace knitting after a while, my hands.
And lucky, I have never really had a problem with that.
It's keeping you from getting wrong. I've heard that too.
To do it themselves, but I am lucky and so far nothing bad has happened. Oh, one other thing, there is something, out of period called Gunnister Man. Yes, okay, this is a young gentleman who may have been mugged and rolled into a peat bog.
Mhm.
And he had stockings and pouches, stuff like that. And that's the first deliberate use you see of knit pearl work as a structural element. Because this is kind of what the pouch looks like. So they did some sort of cast on and created loops, and I'm trying to remember how I did this. And then the rest of this is just a novelty sock yarn that I knit as tight as it would go. So if you have novelty sock yarn left over on a pouch, this is what you can do with it. I used some solid color that I had for the ribbing. But this is the first use of knit to pearl to that I know of that is used as a structural element. And according to the coins in the man's pouch, it's 1690. So we don't know when knit to pearl to comes into use as a structural element. Just saw knit for pearl floor in the stockings as a structural element, but that's 1640. So we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So cool.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much.
Was there
This was a
handout?
treat.
Oh, yeah.
There's a class.